This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. Here we are. The start of the NFL season is just around the corner. Sunday Night Football, the Detroit Lions are going to face the Los Angeles Rams. 17 weeks of glory, here they are. The Detroit Lions are going to start their journey to potentially get to the Super Bowl. The first time in the organization's history, potentially, they can appear and maybe even win the Super Bowl. But we're going to save the NFL talk for the second half of the podcast. Going to start the podcast talking about the Tigers and Michigan State. Because, look, we all know that potentially the Tigers, even though you listened last week and Jock poo-pooed what I said, they still are winning series. They still are gaining traction even on days off. And I think the Jock didn't factor just how shitty baseball teams can sometimes get into the ruts, how bad it can go for teams, and the Royals are in the midst of a losing streak. So we'll talk about that. Michigan and Michigan State, I think I just finally woke up from watching completely like a dumbass, watching the Michigan State game live. I went there and was just like, what am I watching? And the Michigan game, got excited for a day off, watched a great watched Georgia Clemson, watched Texas, was like, wow, this is great. And then the Michigan game happened, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a barn burner. It's a defensive battle, another one. So we'll talk about that here in just a few moments. Because did the week for the Detroit Tigers change your tune just a little bit? They're still hanging around. And they do face some teams that they can beat in September.
Yeah, here's the thing. I need a little bit more. They are lingering like a bad case of jock itch. They're just kind of there, right? But at this moment in time, when we're recording, they're still 10 games out of their division. I know with the wild card, it's a little bit closer, but they haven't seemed to really put it together. Look, 4.5 games out of a wild card, they are incredibly close, right? They get a little bit hot. If they can somehow reel off 10 out of 12 or 10 out of 13 games, I think they're in a bit of a driver's seat there. But all that being said, I don't trust this pitching staff. And you got to realize you're doing it with young kids. And that's great for the future, but that doesn't necessarily help you win in September. It doesn't necessarily help you win in October. So it's cool that they're getting some of this experience. And look, we've all been fooled before. We've seen the Tigers do this before. I feel like they did this last year. They sat there and they got hot at the end of the season, and all of us were like, all right, cool. We're going to carry this into next year, and they're going to be able to do that. And you kind of seen what happened there. They kind of fell on their face. Yes, they are in striking range of catching the Royals. Yes, they are in striking range of catching the Twins. They're there, okay? But all that being said, I'm still not invested. I'm still not willing to put my time or my energy into the Detroit Tigers. It will continue to be one of those things that I will watch from afar, and I will keep tabs on it for this show specifically. But otherwise, I'm still out on the Tigers, especially with Michigan football starting, and that looks like it's got all kinds of problems we're going to get into. Michigan State football starting. Didn't look as hot as I think either one of us maybe thought. You also have the Detroit Lions starting. And I know that you and I both are heavily engaged with those conversations and with those teams. So the Tigers for me will continue to be an afterthought.
I look at the Detroit Tigers and I say, look, I'm in a position of a little bit more optimism. I just think that, you look at it from the Tigers' perspective. I look at it like nobody wants it. Nobody wants to take this for the Royals.
Well, I am more pessimistic than you, generally speaking. So it totally makes sense that you are approaching this from a place of optimism.
Yeah, because the goal for the year was just to evaluate just kind of what this baseball team could be. And there's, it sucks that Cole Keith is still kind of now mired in a slump a little bit. but Torkelson kind of has worked his way back after some struggles. Riley Green, some of the pieces that could be here, as well as some of the young cats I think that are ranked. I think they got a couple guys that are ranked in the top 100 of the new baseball prospect ranking. So to me, it's like you also can benefit from teams slumping. And yeah, if they get to the postseason, they're going to get their ass beat. It's just no doubt about it. And they are, but there's a strength, it's real interesting because I recall that I had asked AJ Hinch like 3 years ago, like when he started doing the opener thing, like what's the reason why you do this? And he kind of explained it just like he did recently when he asked about it. He said he can dictate a little bit more in terms of when there's one starter, opponents can just say, hey, we're going to face off on this guy. He does this in this situation, this situation. When you mix and match and just take guys out, then you kind of dictate a little bit to who is out there. And I just think that that's great in that kind of gives you a little bit of an advantage. It's kind of worked a little bit. So
it does make it harder on the opposing manager and the opposing team. They don't know who to game plan for. They're not really sure how to set their lineup up to match up against your starting pitcher and the guys we're going to follow. So I totally get it. But can you really continue to carry that on? I mean, they are, 140 games-ish into the season here, 139 games in. So you're looking at, 22, 23 more games left in the year? Can you continue to do that and actually win? I don't know if you can. I feel like you feel like that is a key to success for this team, but I don't know if realistically that is an equation to help this team be successful.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And look, I just think that the A's are the perfect elixir, and the White Sox are a perfect elixir to close the season out. So I just think that the Padres, the first game sucked to get shut out, but at the same token, I think that this Detroit Tigers team deserves a little bit more optimism in that they have a chance to be maybe an 84, 85 win team, which is what I predicted. I predicted 88 wins. So they're in that neighborhood. We'll see if they can finish above board here in this. All I'm saying is that the Tigers have done just enough to get Jock to not just throw the remote, but just kind of put it down and keep it on for maybe 2 innings instead of the 0 that he was at. So good job, Tigers. Let's go in the next 7 days. Maybe on the next episode, Jock will now maybe even watch half of a game and pay attention to a series. Let's see if they can.
Jock says put some respect on the Tigers' name.
Exactly. So, cuz we both took it in, and I think that the first intro to this is that probably we're both very underwhelmed by Michigan and Michigan State. I was there at Michigan State, and let me just say the campus was beautiful. I posted a picture at Detroit Podcast. I wrote a line story from the library, and that was kind of generally the same spot that I would study in on the 3rd floor back 20 years ago. It was just so great. I was like, and cuz, I'm going to share this with the audience. Don't tell nobody, but I sat down, and the good Lord blessed me, and I was like, get the F out of here. 3 co-eds just walk in, and I'm like, I can't focus. I'm just like, what the hell? And I'm talking about very attractive, bright-looking ladies that were in their books, just doing their work, chit-chatting a little bit. And I was like, this is just exactly why I came here. Michigan State just is an amazing place. The co-eds were in full force. You always see the pockets of drunk people that by 4 o'clock were already inebriated to the point that they didn't make it to the game. So it just brought back all the great memories. Did a great line story, sat in the library and just kind of reflected on all the hours I spent grinding and paying attention and studying at college. So it was a great thing. But then the game happened, and I check in at 4:30, and the game's at 7, and it was like, oh my God, they're trying to throw the ball deep, but it just offensively, I just thought it'd be a little bit better against the caliber of opponent in terms of Florida Atlantic. But look, Tom Herman, you do the research. Oh, he knows he's a giant killer. He has experience against Big Ten and big opponents. I'm like, okay, it was a grind. But there were some coaching mistakes that Jonathan Smith made in terms of, hey, take the points. Take the points when they're so precious. But luckily, the caliber of competition didn't make it so that it was all the mistakes were punitive. But my God, was that brutal. And then you turn to me. I just looked at the Michigan game, and I'm not surprised that they struggled a little bit. I mean, once it was announced that they went with the walk-on, this is a developmental player, and it's just a tough situation for the guy, and the whole world's beating up on him. No, he's not J.J. McCarthy, and no, he doesn't have the same weapons that he had. So I just thought the reaction to the Michigan game was like, you guys really do, in your mind, think you're Alabama, and you're just going to roll in talent 20 at a time, and I was like, oh, okay. And so I laughed a little bit at the Michigan reaction. Good win, professional, but at the same token, yes, they're not. I mean, it's not that much of a stretch to say, wow, the 24 team is not as good as the 23 team, and they're probably going to get their ass beat by Texas. But it's a situation in which it's a rebuild. I mean, Michigan fans, if you truly sit here and think that you're Georgia and Alabama and you're in that class where you lose 20 guys and you replace them, you're lucky you have Loveland and an offensive line that did enough to get the job done. But yeah, your quarterback play's got to step it up, and you're in a rebuild. You're just trying to win one of those big games. So that's just the way it goes.
So here's a bit of my reaction. In some of this is a little bit of an overreaction to both of these games and things that I took out of them. I want to kind of put a pin in Michigan football because I'm going to go into that a little bit heavier, and especially with your reaction to the quarterback, and I'm going to counter it just a little bit. But what I took out of that Michigan State game is I think the defense is going to be very good this year. I think that defense is going to grow, and as the Big Ten season goes on, that defense is going to cause fits for a lot of people. It's going to cause a lot of problems. I think the quarterback and the offense, you couldn't complete a pass downfield, and it stalled out. It stagnated. It didn't look as crisp and as good as I think we both thought it was going to, especially with Aiden Childs. This is a guy who is in the second year of Jonathan Smith's program. This is a guy who was there last year. Look, didn't play a lot last year, but basically had the playbook, sat underneath the learning tree. I think we expected him to hit the ground running. He did not. He stumbled out of the blocks. Didn't look very good. All that being said, I think as the season goes on, the offense will get better. The offense better get better. Otherwise, the quarterback that you have is not going to be there very long. He's not going to be the quarterback of this team. I think this team could be the most penalized team in all of college football. There were so many penalties in this game. And I don't know if it was just the defense being hard-hitting and FAU's quarterback not strapping his helmet on, or if this team was actually going out trying to send a message and kind of headhunting. I didn't think that there were as many targeting calls as there were in that game. Some of them I thought were a little bit questionable. But all that being said, you're doing enough to draw flags, and you're getting flagged. These types of things, these inconsistencies with the tackling are going to have to get worked out. Otherwise, this team is going to be putting itself in very tough spots. I think some of that will get worked out, but I also do believe that this team is playing with a bit of an edge, and I think this team is going to acquire a lot of penalties as the season goes on. All of that being said, I'm confident in your head coach. Michigan State has an actual football coach. They do not have Mel Tucker. They do not have a guy who is pretending to be a guy who is a head football coach. They do not have a guy who's got the glasses with the mustache and looking like Groucho Marx. They don't have that guy as they're wearing the headset on the sideline. They have a legit football coach. I believe and I feel confident that he will turn this program around, and he will make this a team that will be in the playoff conversation. And some years, this is going to be a team that is going to be contending in that playoff. So I have a lot of faith in the direction that MSU is going. All that being said, I think I said that this team was going to win possibly 7 or 8 games to begin the year. I would like to walk that back a little bit.
Yeah.
I think this team might win maybe 5 or 6 to be polite. So it's a giant work in progress, bro. And I was shocked at how big of a work in progress this really is.
But silver lining, that defense looked good. It looked better. But yeah, the offense was just disappointing.
Defense looked great. I thought defense looked really good.
I just was surprised that the offense was kind of Smith's forte. Didn't look a little bit more crisp in terms of the use of tight ends, first downs. But look, take it for what it is. I can come to respect pounding the football and using your offensive line to try and allow Childs to run the football a little bit and use his athleticism. But in terms of Michigan State, this year it's just going to be about, okay, weather the storm, don't get your ass beat too much. I think the defense will keep them in games, but that offense, your wide receivers don't look as talented. I think you got to play some guys that maybe were on your bench, and you recognize, it looked sloppy. It was like Aiden Childs was throwing the ball, but They just, for whatever reason, the ball was going every which way but into the receiver's hands, and it was just like, I can admit, I left halftime, got a snack, and was like, okay, I'm probably going to stay till the middle of the third quarter because I can't sit in line for an hour after the game ahead of work and everything you got to go on. I had a lighter day on Saturday. I didn't want to do that. So I'm like, okay. I talked to a reporter, and I just said, I just think that Michigan State will pull away in the second half. Little did I know that leaving midway through the third quarter, that was it. I saw all the points. 16 points in the first half and nothing in the second. I didn't miss a single point when I left. I was like, what? I got in my car. Thankfully, the traffic going home was smooth sailing. But it's tough, man. Those 7 o'clock games are tough. I had a couple buddies stop their season tickets because they have families, and the times are later and later, and the adjustments to TV have made it so that it's just really difficult. So it's going to be tight. Maryland and Ohio State in September, because I'm going to Ohio State, but that's about it. And then I'm going to Texas to see. I'm going to the Michigan-Texas game, going to Michigan State. I think that's about it. 4 or 5 college games for me to check out. But yeah, Michigan State has a rebuild on their hands. But yeah, I think the general level of optimism is there because it just seems like everybody that looks at Jonathan Smith says, okay, he has the kind of mindset that can build a Big Ten program, but not this year. They're behind. They're probably going to take it, take a whooping to Maryland, who looked good in their opener. Now on the Michigan side, do you ascribe to the notion that, hey, people are all up in arms, like, whoa, Orgy can't throw. Why is he getting those opportunities? What's the deal? Orgy doesn't seem as fun as everybody thinks it is. And it's like, relax. It's just the opener. You try things. You pretty much were confident that you were going to beat this team. And it ended up kind of like a typical Michigan game in that I think you won by 20. It wasn't pretty, but you pulled away late. You wore them down. And I do kind of the opinion that you probably don't need to bring in Orgy that much, but he does provide an athleticism into it does provide a little bit of an alternative that, hey, you give him a spell, especially being that the quarterback that's starting doesn't have that much experience. I can understand it. It's kind of a transition year for Sharon Moore, but he took a lot of heat for kind of the 2 quarterback situation. I don't think it's going to matter against Texas. I just think you're outmanned. But I do think that playing the game of that magnitude in the Big House is a big advantage for Michigan. I do think that they'll cover. I think it'll be maybe a 5 to 7 point game. Texas will just do enough, and Michigan will fall short. I don't see a blowout. I see some competitiveness. I think that everyone's in the Michigan program hearing all the noise and all the outside talk that, we're going to get our ass handed to us, and the line keeps going in bigger and bigger, and it's like, Texas is good, but you can pressure that quarterback into some mistakes. You can, Sarkisian is a little bit on the aggressive wild side, so I could see this being a nice close contest, but in the end, Texas wins. But are you mad that they started a walk-on that many people did not think was going to win the job at all?
So this is what I'm really mad about with the quarterback situation. This is what I wanted to put a little bit of a pin in here and save it for this part of our show. I'm upset with Sharon Moore not doing more to get a capable quarterback in here. I feel like Davis Warren is the guy that he wants to give the football to. That is the guy that he feels gives them the best chance to win a football game. But I feel like there's this attachment to Alex Orgy, and he feels like he owes Orgy something, so he's got to figure out ways to get Orgy time. And I feel like that's a little bit disruptive to this offense. What I think needed to be done was in the offseason, they needed to hit the transfer portal. They needed to go find somebody else. Davis Warren could work out. He could. I don't know if it's going to work out. We'll see what takes place. I get he hasn't had a lot of snaps. He's a guy who I believe came in JJ's class, and he's a guy who, for the most part, has held the clipboard. And so now it's his time to shine. So maybe he has some untapped potential that we didn't get to see that first week. But I feel like the bigger issue is what they did as far as addressing the quarterback position heading into this season, because neither one of these guys look good. Neither one of these guys really look like they wanted the job. I think Davis Warren probably gives them the best ability to run the offense that Sharon Moore wants to run, and will give them the best option to to win games. I think Alex Orji is going to be a guy who's going to be a bit of a change of pace. He'll be a guy that you'll have packages for. You'll roll him in. You might have two quarterbacks in at one time, and you have to figure out what you're doing with Orji. Maybe do a little flea flicker or some type of a pass to Orji so he can try to get the ball downfield, or maybe Orji starts under center and he flicks it to Davis Warren and he can throw it down the field, because I don't think Alex Orji can throw a football forward. Or if he does, he throws it really similar to Darnell to Robinson. Remember the old Michigan quarterback? He had this kind of like punt pass throw. It was like this thing where he put the football right by like his ear and his neck, and then Denard Robinson would just kind of like push it out there. It wasn't like it was an actual pass. It was weird. I feel like that's kind of what Alex Orji is. Incredible athlete, but can't seem to throw the football forward. So I think it's going to be one of those things where as the season wears on, Davis Warren will be the guy who pulls away, and Alex Orji will become kind of this specialized player. I think the O-line has some stuff that it's got to work out, right? The quarterback situation hopefully gets figured out. The O-line, I think, will become good enough, but the O-line looked incredibly rough in this game, and that was frustrating. And then you compound that with the play that you got from a guy like Donovan Edwards. Donovan Edwards is supposed to be this guy who is supposed to be in the discussion for Heisman. He's this guy who's supposed to be able to take on this newfound role in this offense. He's supposed to be a leader. Donovan Edwards looks like a part-time bit player, and he looks like he's going to be a monster bust. This guy, yeah, he has shown up in big games. I get it. But whenever he is supposed to be the featured back, he comes up incredibly small, and I'm incredibly frustrated with watching him. It seems like the national narrative is to really push this guy. I don't understand it. I don't see it. To me, Khalil Mullins is the lead back for this team. That's the guy who's going to run between the tackles. That's the guy who's going to get those extra yards. That's the guy who's going to get popped, bounce off of a guy, fall forward for 2 yards, and keep the chains moving. Donovan Edwards is not that guy. Now, on the positive side, I think Colston Loveland's going to be an absolute stud. I think he's going to be an incredible tight end here at Michigan. I think he's going to go to the NFL. He'll either be a tight end or he's going to be a slot wide receiver. I believe he's going to be that good. He looks like he is legit a dog. And that is the one guy on offense that you can point to and you could say, we need a clutch play. We need points. We need to figure something out. That's the guy we got. On top of that, it feels like they got a kicker, which is cool. This dude has a crazy leg, kicking like 50-some yard field goals, and there was no doubt about him. There was no question. So cool that they got a kicker. It felt like they really needed to lean on him a little bit in this game because the points were hard to come by. And it felt like the defense really stood up and made some plays to kind of help stretch that lead that the kicker gave them. So defensively, I think they're a bit of a work in progress. I think it's going to be one of those types of defenses where it's going to be risk reward. They're going to blitz. They're going to blitz a lot. They're going to have cornerbacks that are going to be jumping pass routes. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, you're going to be in a whole lot of trouble. So I think this kind of goes back to the mindset of the defensive coordinator, and it's just one of those things where it's a lot of blitzing, it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of getting guys up and getting guys into the face of the quarterback. So when it works and when it pays off, it's fantastic. Guys like Josiah Stewart look awesome. Guys like Will Johnson are able to make a pick six, and things are able to work out. When it doesn't, you got guys behind you, and now you're chasing them down, and you're trying to tackle them before they score. So I think it's going to be a feast or famine type of defense. The thing is, I don't think the Big Ten's all that great. I think it's good. I don't think it's all that great. I think there's probably 2 or 3 teams with this bigger Big Ten that have legit shots at causing headaches and causing problems. So I think for the most part, as a team, Michigan will kind of be able to survive, and that I think I predicted 9-3 last week. I think 9-3 will be fine for this team, but I don't think you have any legit chance of winning a national championship, and I don't know if I give you a legit chance of winning a college football playoff game if you're lucky enough to get there. And to me, what is most interesting is this team went out and they played a pretty decent game on Saturday. Friday before the game, all kinds of news and all kinds of information started to swirl about their head coach. And there was this report that came out, and I want to get your take on it, that Sharon Moore is basically working on a 3-page memorandum. He does not have an official contract as of yet. It basically outlines what the contract's going to look like, outlines what he'll get paid, outlines what's going to happen. But nothing has been officially signed. Nothing has been officially documented. To me, this seems so bizarre. And I get why the university wants to do it. I feel like it's a way to protect the university. They don't have him sign the contract. That way, if they have to fire him, if any NCAA information comes out, or if he is somehow found accountable by the NCAA, they can fire him at will and not have to pay him or not have to buy him out of a contract. I get it. It's trying to protect the university. But to me, it just feels like it is so small. The University of Michigan has kind of like, to me, it just feels like they have like done a complete 180 from the university that I grew up, loved, watched, and pleaded my allegiance to. To me, now the university feels like it conducts itself with such a small mind and such a small business sense. It feels like they just do things, and they invent things and do things so counter to what big-time programs do. It's frustrating. It is irritating to watch. I want to get your sense on what was your reaction to the report that came out last Friday before Saturday's game, and what do you think about Michigan operating in this manner? Because it's bizarre to me.
Yeah, you have to kind of protect all bases, knowing that Sharon Moore is going to be under the, being looked at and investigated as part of what happened with Jim Harbaugh. If you're Sharon Moore, you're kind of like, wait a minute, hook me up. But at the same token, look, you got the support of Jim Harbaugh. You got the support of, I think, the university. I think they like what he brings to the table. I think that it's a nice, seamless transition. It just stinks that there's still the air of cheating and all that, of what's going to happen. So it is a little bit unusual to have this memo. But look, he's going to be compensated. He's going to make some money outside of the university, and it's all about winning. So this year really is a pass in terms of contracts, in terms of everything. It's literally like, okay, just don't let it collapse and don't go, don't have a 6-win year. If you can just hold the fort down, just maybe win one of the big games, maybe even Texas, maybe even 2, maybe even have a chance. But, it'll be interesting to see when the NCAA reveals the findings, what Sharon Moore knew, what was his involvement once information came, how this all shakes out, and 2, if he completely craps the bed and loses like 60-5 or 60-7 against Ohio State and just looks discombobulated, no preparation, it doesn't have his team ready, and is sloppy because it's going to be in Columbus. So you look at it and you say, okay, maybe instead of $8 million, you go down to 6.5 or 6 or whatever it may be. I don't think it's small or anything like that. I think there's various reasons why. You look at it and you say, okay, let's just take it easy. Let's just kind of, before we get married, let's just take the extra 6 months of our engagement instead of getting married right away after the engagement. Instead of the year, the typical that most people do, let's just do a year and 6 months. And that's good enough for Michigan. And I do think he's going to recruit well. I think that he's going to get these guys better. They'll compete hard, and they'll do the things that make Michigan successful. So I don't think it's a big deal, but it is unique to do that. And I wouldn't have done it. I would have said, hey, I want some guaranteed contract here, 5 years, and some big money up front. But I get if you're Sharon Moore and you kind of got to prove yourself a little bit toward Manuel, hey, it's all good. And look, the money will be there when you start to showcase the confidence that it's not going to collapse. And that's just what's going to happen. And the first test is right away. Texas is coming to town. Any chance at all, I'd give it a 5% chance they win. I think that they keep it close. Any chance that they compete with Texas, who's looking to do some big things, probably on the doorstep of being a national championship contender.
So I think you kind of laid it out when you were kind of doing your assessment of this game. I think Steve Sarkisian is the big question mark. He's the big elephant in the room because he's a bit of a gambler. He takes these unnecessary risks in these games. I think they've got a better team than Michigan. I think they might have a better coaching staff than Michigan. I think that coach, though, likes to take unnecessary risks that sometimes hurt his team and sometimes blow up in his face. It is going to be I think this is going to be a close game. I think if Michigan can drag Texas down and muddy the waters, if they can get their run game going and control the clock, I think it'll come down to 2 or 3 throws from Davis Warren, and they could win this game. It is going to be an interesting game. I think they've got a shot, but all that being said, I think Texas wins this game. Texas is just too talented. They've got a pretty veteran-laden team, and I think it's just a really good team that's deep in a lot of big positions. I think their wide receivers are good. I think they've got a really good quarterback. Offensive line, I think, is talented. They like to be able to run the ball as well. Defensively, I think they are very good. So this is going to be a tough task for a young Michigan team. I think Texas ends up beating them by 10. I think, like I said, I think Michigan will have a shot, but they really got to muddy this game up. The crowd's going to really have to be behind them. It's going to have to rattle this Texas team. But I think if Davis Warren is able to make a couple of big throws, it will put them in a position where they can get the W. I don't think it happens, but that's how I would see the game playing out. Conversely, MSU traveling to Maryland, that's a pretty big game. Maryland looks like a pretty good team. That looks like a different Maryland team than we've seen in the past. What are your concerns and what are your expectations for MSU traveling to Maryland this weekend?
Oh, it's going to be tight. It's going to be a situation in which you look at it and you go, my goodness, it's going to be just keep it close. Don't get embarrassed. Just improve. Offensively, Aiden Childs has got to connect with his receivers. Maybe not overthrow him by 5 yards. Maybe if it's 3rd and 6, you don't throw it 35 yards. Just try to operate a little bit more in the realm of conservative when you need to be. Take chances on like 2nd and 1, 2nd and inches when it's a little bit more.
Take the field goals when the field goals are present.
Exactly. Just keep it within reason. It's probably going to be a loss, but look, just be respectable and walk out without your tail between your legs. That's my only expectation.
All right. I don't feel like that's a bad expectation to have. Look, I think it's going to be a tough road to go to Maryland. Like I said, this is a different Maryland team than we've seen in the past. I think they are going to be pretty good. And MSU trying to kind of figure it all out. There's a lot of new pieces, a lot of things working there. I think this is a game that it could get away from MSU. Like you said, goal is go in, keep it close, give yourself a chance to win this game. And if they do, it'll be something good for us to talk about next week when we come back.
No doubt. And hopefully, college football can be college football is crazy in regards to how fast Florida State has fallen off Florida. I mean, it's just crazy in regards to the haves and the have-nots. Clemson, look, I think the bottom line is the biggest takeaway from week 1 is Dabo Swinney is just embarrassing himself by not using the tools. It's like, hey, I want to have a 5-star restaurant, but I'm not going to have any gourmet items. I'm going to get all my food from Aldi's. And you're like, you're not going to get any gourmet stuff from the market? No. You're not going to get anything from overseas? No caviar? No. You're like, bro, there's a transfer portal. You get good players there. No. He got embarrassed. Simple as that. Dabo Swinney got exposed, and the memes were just out of control in regards to the man that won't go into the portal. All right, Dabo, that's what you get. You got outclassed, and I watched it live, and it was like, oh, Clemson has fallen way down the ranks, and you're no longer part of the elite. And you got booted unceremoniously, Dabo Swinney. You know who's not booted unceremoniously? The Detroit Lions. They're on the cusp. They're the Alabama. They're the pride. They're the football team that's getting all the love from SI, ESPN, all the 3-letter projections and weird analytical models have the Lions in the Super Bowl. Some have the team winning it, some have the team losing it, but all in all, cuz here we are. It's a big time moment for these Detroit Lions. And I think everyone's excited. The general air is the atmosphere is is so much to the point now it's reached a fever pitch. Dan Campbell's in commercials. The Lions are hawking products left and right. I look at him like, damn, Amon-Ra's got so much money. He still needs Little Caesars money. How much money do you need? If I was making $30 million, I'd be like, I don't really think I want to do Little Caesars. Can you get me something else? So
can you give me a Jets deal? Can I do some Jets pizza?
Yeah, can I get like a Rolex deal or something like on a high-end deal? Like Little Caesars, it's like, oh, okay, but hey, there's never enough, I guess, in the world of sports and advertisement. But I think for me, it's clear. Our excitement level is through the roof. I'm excited to see Detroit Lions topics. I'm excited to see a football team that clearly is probably going to win 10 or more games. All the talk has been positive. All the talk has been hopeful. To me, I am just excited that the fan base gets to kind of revel a little bit in their glory of being a good team. They kind of, you can tell on Twitter if you're on there at Detroit Podcast, the fan base is enjoying puffing their chest out. They're pimp walking through the football Twitter sphere. They're enjoying kind of being a football team that's not being talked about as a laughingstock. And it's nice. I think
they're taking in all the accolades.
They're taking
all of it. They're loving it.
They're loving it. And it's well-deserved. The fan base deserves it. Puff your chest out. Act a fool. I'm even predicting a blowout against the Rams. Why not? Just have a good time with it. Just enjoy it. Look, the fan base has been kicked, beaten, and now, you know, in a way, the fan base gets to enjoy the life on the other side. It's like the guy from Hamtramck who wins the lotto. And look, it's going to be a little rough at first. He's not going to be, you know, enjoying the caviar and the wine the exact right way. He might spill it all over himself. He might spray the Dom Perignon all over his cousin at a fantasy draft. And you're like, dude, that's a $600 bottle. He's like, yeah, so what? So it's a little bit, it's new money, but in the end, enjoy it. And I just think that the fan base is gobbling up all the positivity for this football team. And it's reasonable to be that way because this football team's likable. They got a bunch of guys that you can root for. Very few divas, very few guys that you can't just say, hey, let's chit-chat, and they'll give you an honest response and some time. And it's a nice spot to be in. This football team heading into the season amongst the most positive stories in sports.
Yeah, I think this is one of those seasons where the expectation is huge. The fan base is ready. I think it is one of those things that is probably so palpable for Lions fans. There are expectations of winning. Everybody is expecting a Super Bowl, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, for us, this is kind of bonkers, right? We are approaching this season with playoffs and Super Bowl in mind. We're looking at teams and we're trying to calculate and figure out how tiebreakers might be decided for home field advantage for the playoffs. This is something that we haven't really experienced. So when you talk about the fans on Twitter puffing their chest out and kind of taking in all the accolades, this is one of those things where it is super exciting to be a Lions fan right now. It is super exciting to wear the Honolulu blue. It is super exciting to see your guys getting respect, being talked about as some of the best in the business, some of the best in the league. It's so much fun to sit there and see a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown getting national love, see guys like Penei Sewell or Jared Goff get that national spotlight and get that highlight. To me, it's absolutely awesome. It is a lot of fun right now. Best way I could describe it. It's a lot of fun to be a Lions fan. And then when you look at when this team goes on the road, I mean, I've got buddies who are making plans for Arizona. I've got buddies who are making plans for Indianapolis. And look, they're looking to take over stadiums. Like, this is a fan base that is traveling well. This is a fan base where it kind of feels like you are the 54th man on this roster. You're going and you're going to go do your job. You're going to go do your work. You're going to help take over a stadium. You're going to help turn momentum. Look, you've got Matthew Stafford coming back to Detroit again. I think it's going to be even more vicious and more gnarly this time around than it was last time. And we can talk about that if you want. But it's going to be one of those things where it's going to be a raucous environment on Sunday. And you have players now up and down this roster, up and down this lineup that are studs, that are guys who are impact players. And you see it all over. I mean, look at last year. You had a guy like Brian Branch who came out of nowhere. He was so good for the D. You had a guy like Sam Laporta, who was an absolute savage. Look, me and you both play fantasy football. Sam Laporta is like the number one tight end in the league. This is a team that drafted that guy. So they've got guys all over the place. They've got young guys that they've added to this team. So it's going to be a fun season. On the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball, who's a guy who you feel will burst onto the scene and be an impactful player this year?
Yeah, offensively, it's going to be interesting because clearly J-Mo's the guy that everyone's like, yeah, give him the football. Clearly, first-round pick, the talent's there. I think he's going to get the football quite a bit. But I don't think it's a guy that's going to burst onto the scene per se because the offense is pretty stacked, right? You know, Khalif Raymond's going to get his touches. I just think that a guy that's going to enter again into the conversation of, hey, don't forget about this guy, is David Montgomery. I just think that this football team is going to move the football at will, and he's going to get a lot of those, forceful yards, key in late in games. People are going to cease to forget about the guy that works hard. I think David Montgomery really is underrated in regards to not being a flashy kind of guy that's just going to want to hog the spotlight or dance in the end zone. He's going to be workmanlike, but I just think that in a game where you need the tough yardage, I just think that his over 4 yards per carry average is going to be very much coveted by this football team, and I just think that flash and pizzazz is Jahmyr Gibbs and what he can do out of the backfield. But when you need those tough crunch yards in late in game moments, I just think that hopefully David Montgomery stays healthy. I like what he can do. Defensively, I'm excited to see what DJ Reader brings now to this football team. I know he's a veteran, clearly with talent, but a guy that kind of not talked about a lot, but I think can help if he stays healthy is Marcus Davenport. I think that he wants to show that he can be a baller and help this defensive line out. I think he'll benefit from playing next to Aleem. And he'll have his moments where he makes some plays, and maybe in critical moments. Maybe not every day letting up the stats, maybe not consistent, but maybe in those pressure moments when you exactly need a play, he'll make it. And I think that he'll do that. And then everybody wants to see Terrion Arnold kind of be that guy that is, a guy that fulfills his promise and not like Jeff Okudah, because Okudah, we kind of knew right from the get-go that it was going to be it's going to be a big question mark, and everybody that was a fan was like, wait a minute, you're too much of a hater. It's like, no. Terrion, I think, has the belief, because he played at Alabama, played against the best, that he's going to develop into something special. That's why I think it's going to break out. And then just real fast in regards to Stafford, I just think that, look, clearly boo his ass. I'm glad his wife's not coming. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere no matter what. And
boo him, boo her, boo the kids too, boo everybody.
Boo everybody. So it's just going to be great. And I thought that Taylor Decker said it. Anybody that comes to Ford Field, anybody, hostile environment, and force some of those penalties and make it so that communication is utterly, difficult. And to me, the season goal to me is to get the number 1 seed and have all roads truly lead through Detroit. And that's what I'm hoping for this year. Is there a player that a rookie player or somebody that you think can be an X factor? Do you think it's going to be on the defense? I think the biggest question mark legitimately is the defense, right? I think offensively, I mean, I know everyone's nervous about the 4th guy, but Dan Campbell even said, he's like, I don't have to really worry about wide receiver 4 and 5 when we got 6 options in St. Brown, Jameson, Laporta, Brock Wright, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Sione Vaki. That's 6-7 players outside of Khalif Raymond. So you're fine. You don't have to worry about DPJ getting called up from the practice squad for his 2 targets. I think that can be put to rest. I think this football team is going to score a shit ton of points. Please, can you just stop the opponent when you need to?
Yeah, and look, I think offensively, you bring back essentially the same exact crew that you had last year. So you've got guys who are now taking another step forward in their development. A guy like Laporta, a guy like Gibbs, you're getting more of that playbook. So, look, I think the offense is going to be just fine. I believe the offense will be A-okay. On top of that, you're working in a guy like J-Mo. He's going to get more snaps. He'll probably be the guy who has improved the most and is the guy who really explodes, kind of like Laporta did last year for this team offensively. Defensively, I think you nailed it. I think Terrion Arnold comes in, and he, as a young player, there's going to be a lot to prove, but I think he's going to acquit himself very, very well. I think Terrion Arnold is going to be just fine. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. You look at what Brian Branch did last year, came in and just played out of his mind. I think Terrion Arnold's kind of cut from that same cloth. And another guy on defense who I think is going to give you a lot of meaningful snaps, and is going to be a guy that maybe not be in the realm of Terrion Arnold, but we're going to talk about because he's going to make plays, is going to be Amik Robinson. I think Amik Robinson is going to be a guy who is going to help flip the field. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be a bit of a nuisance and going to be a fly in the ointment for other offenses. I think he's going to lock down slot guys. He's going to interrupt tight ends. I think he's going to be a guy that they're going to send into the backfield, and he's going to blitz. He's going to get home on the quarterback. So I expect him to be a bit of a nightmare for other offenses. So I think this team has really done enough on defense to make themselves that much more competitive, to make themselves that much more nasty, make them be that much more aggressive and play that style of football that they like to play. They like to turn you over. They like to get after you. They like to put pressure on the quarterback. They like to hit you. And I think this team defensively has all of those makings, and I think they should be in a really good spot this season. Obviously, health is a factor, so as long as everybody stays healthy, but I really do think it's going to be J-Mo taking a big step forward on offense, and I think it'll be Terrion Arnold taking a big step forward on defense, and I think Amik Robinson is going to be a player that these fans fall in absolute love with. Real quick, I wanted to get your take. I don't know if you've seen it or not. I'm assuming you did. What did you think of that ESPN simulation where the Lions come back from 28-14 to beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 29-28? Lions end up going for scoring a touchdown to put them down by 8. Dan Campbell goes for 2. I think Khalif Raymond scores the 2-point conversion, and then the Lions are able to go back down the field and score another touchdown, and they're able to hold on to get the 29-28 victory in the ESPN simulation of this year's Super Bowl. What are your thoughts on that? I think it's fun. I think it's crazy, but it's always interesting to see our team get mentioned in the likes of a simulated Super Bowl.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, bestow my heart, ESPN, SI predicted them to win it and put them on a cover. So that was great. So let's always not to forget SI did the honors first and did a photo shoot and sold out the magazine. So the national guys were thankful that, we were able to kind of help push that. So that was kind of cool. You guys, really are great. And I said to the guys, hey, the podcast definitely is a big driving force, and our Twitter page and everything like that. Detroit fans are crazy, and ship out more. I'm like, what the heck? You send them to the bookstores and people can get it for a half hour. It's like, make more. So hopefully the message got through. But ESPN, look, to me, I'm offended. I need it to be, and I've said it on record, I'm going to say it all year. This Super Bowl, I don't want to see the Chiefs. We've beaten them before. They're in there all the time. I don't want to spend half the coverage talking about Patrick Mahomes and his situation and things like that. So I am of the opinion the best Super Bowl is Lions and Texans. And the reason why is it's the two different ways they rebuilt. Lions draft and develop. Texans bought some free agents. And it has to clash. And it's a perfect clash. And you can get the opportunity to win the Super Bowl and stamp that the way you did it is the way to go. Because otherwise, if the Texans win, then we got to come back here on the podcast and say, darn it, why didn't you spend money when you had it? Draft and develop my ass. So I need to see this in person, and I love what the Texans are doing. So I love the simulations. I love the idea that the Detroit Lions are in the talk of having a great run. They deserve to be there. I can't wait to see it. And it's going to be a great opportunity for this Detroit Lions football team to really battle all year long. And cause I set the stage now. My bold prediction, Brad Holmes makes a lot of phone calls at the trade deadline and adds one key offensive member and one key defensive member. He sees it. It'll be a good football team. The mission is get us guys. Brad will deliver, and he'll get everybody excited for this run because the window's open. Go through it. Kick the door down.
Are they winning the NFC North?
Yes.
And are they going to be the number 1 seed in the NFC for the playoffs?
Yes. Yes, they will be. Why not?
Ooh,
yes. One seed all around. Do it, baby. And go with the best opportunity. I think there will be some lulls. There'll be some some adversity that they got to face, but overall, it's going to be a great time for Detroit Lions fans, baby. And it's just great because of the opportunities that are going to be present for this football team. I think Jared Goff is hungry. I think he gets better, and this offense is legit. I think that Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn will be better, and will put this football team in a great spot. If there is a hiccup, what would derail this football team besides injuries? What do you think would derail this football team, Cuz? What would put the stain on a season and all this hype?
So two things that come to mind, and one's on the offense, one's on the defense. Mm-hmm. Offensively, this team is not able to be as efficient and duplicate something similar to what they did last year. Last year, this offense played out of its mind. Jared Goff was a top 5 quarterback, did a good job of taking care of the football, spread it around, got a lot of guys involved. If for some reason they're not able to come back and function at a high level like that, it's going to put this team in a tough spot where they're going to really have to lean on this defense. And yeah, this defense has been revamped, and we both really like it. We both think this defense is going to be very good. But this team is essentially an offense-first team. And I think as you kind of watch these Super Bowls unfold, the offenses really do a great job of helping you win that Super Bowl. So if the offense has to take a step back or isn't able to be as efficient as it was last year, that'll be a big deal. The other thing is, if this defense for some reason doesn't click, if this defense doesn't take the steps forward like we feel that they are, and if some of these guys are bust, if Terrion Arnold is more Jeff Okudah than he is Brian Branch, we've got a big problem. So it's are the pieces that were just acquired, or are the pieces that have been put in place on that defense able to play their position and play their role and hold up their end of the bargain? The offense is going to go out there. We believe the offense is going to go out there and do its job. Is the defense going to do its job? And is it going to hold up its end of the bargain and make this team better? If it does, I think we're talking Super Bowl. If the defense falters, or if for some reason the offense takes steps back, it's going to be a difficult season. I think there's enough talent here where one can overcome the other, but they can't overcome both. So it is getting this team to play on the same page, I think, is incredibly important to make that Super Bowl run.
No doubt, man. It's going to be a fun time. Rams game, I see a win. I see a nice start to the season. Sunday Night Football, they handle business. I don't see them losing in any capacity.
Yeah, I think they beat the Rams. I'm going to say it'll be probably a little bit closer of a game than what you're giving it credit for.
Right.
I think it's going to be something like 27-24, 27-21. But they beat the Rams. I think they make Matt Stafford's life a living hell. I hope the fans boo the shit out of him. I hate that guy so much. I absolutely hate him. So I hope they boo the shit out of him. I hate his wife even more. I wish she was coming, the guitar and feather her. That'd be great.
So you're not going to be in attendance for her live show podcast with Mr. Hank?
Dude, she can go.
I know. We know you're
fly a kite.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Thank you so much for following our coverage. Thank you guys for your appreciation of the work that you see, the podcasts, the posts, and everything that we do here at Detroit Sports Podcast. Our mission, we just celebrated 11 years. And look, I don't want to throw dirt on anybody's grave, but when I read that Rob Parker's bought and paid for airtime at 1270 lasted 85 days without the second round of funding, it really hit home, first and foremost, what a bad idea that was in this day and age when you can just do your own thing. Second of all, how you run it that way to besmirch trying it that way, it's a stain on the business when you could really just do it your own way and follow the lead of people that have done it. But it just goes to show you that after 11 years, people still listen, interact, hate on, and invite the Detroit Sports Podcast, and even steal our podcast and air it on the radio. But in the end, we're always watching out for those that are taking our content and got the radio station to say Detroit Sports Podcast and to credit the work that we do. And it's a great thing to be just to be a part of the mix in the Detroit sports media, and to see podcasts now being forced upon every single person that's in the media, you got to do it, and I love it. And it's just to be a small part of the sports community here in town. It means the world. Thank you guys for your 11 years. Adam and I are not going anywhere. We're going to broadcast until we can no longer literally talk. That's how much we love doing this and breaking down Detroit sports. So for the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I'm the Doc, John Macaroon. Let's go. Scream your heart out, but pace yourself so you can enjoy the game. And drink beforehand, because if you drink during the game, you're going to have to bust out $200, and it's better served in other places. Listen, everybody, thank you again from the bottom of our hearts for your support. I can't wait literally until next week when I can talk to my guy Adam again on the latest edition of Doc and Jock.